I cannot believe that we're talking live together. I know not in person, but almost in person.
Almost in person. And you and I actually met, I would even say about 20 years ago. This was probably before Sam and I were married. We were engaged, and I came visited Warsaw, Poland, before we got married. And then from there, of course I came back, but I think around that time you were having your own love story going with a Canadian.
Yes. True.
Yeah. And so neither of us are in Warsaw, Poland anymore.
No.
You're in Toronto.
Yes,
and that's how we got to say it, right? They say Toronto in Canada,
yes,
right?
You roll over that second T, and yes.
Yeah. And
you can say Toronto, but then everybody's going to know that you're not from here. But you're doing a great job,
Thank you. Oh gosh, well, it is really wild to have you here, and I'm happy to say that this is the launching episode of something that I am doing called ReEnvision Life Talks. And by the way, I should probably introduce myself for those of you who don't know who I am, who may catch this, because we are making this public, whether it's going to be here through the ReEnvision Marriage and Family Therapy page or on our YouTube page. But my name is Michelle Park. I am the founder and owner and one of the therapists of a private practice in Queens, New York called ReEnvision Marriage and Family Therapy. And for a really long time, I think I had brewing in my mind just to have something, a platform where, because I know so many amazing people, by the way, and one of them being Renata, but so many people who I have heard directly or seen from afar and just observed how their life has changed and how it took courage and breakthrough, and just there was something that happened where their life really was re-envisioned. And so a part of these ReEnvision Life Talks is to present, for now, once a month, stories, whether it's an interview, and Renata and I, we're just going to have fun today. It's going to be like a conversation as though we were both in our living rooms chatting, talking about just what's happened in our lives, but in specifically here for Renata, and really just offer all of you some hope, because I think we live in a world where there's a lot of difficulties, a lot of hardships, and I think just to have stories of hope is so important. So that's a part of where this ReEnvision Life Talks concept comes from. But of course, as a therapist, I'm a licensed marriage family therapist in New York and Florida, and I'm hoping to get licensed in New Jersey soon. But I work with a lot of people, individuals, couples, and families. And so there's a lot of hope that's needed, but I've also have had the front seat to see a lot of life change and a lot of courageous work in people. So this is just another way to share what I get to experience with everybody else. So the other thing too, I want to say happy Father's Day to him, right? And to all the fathers, whether you are a biological father, an adoptive father, stepfather, spiritual father, even an uncle, right? Whatever, as a father figure, happy Father's Day to you, as well as we are celebrating Juneteenth. And those of you who are just hearing that for the first time, I hope that you get a chance to actually look that up and learn more about that, because I think it's really important to be able to learn about and to celebrate, so, and commemorate as well. So without further ado, I want to finally introduce all of you to my good friend, Renata Constable. It is such a pleasure to have you here. Renata, thank you for agreeing to be on my first episode here and to just share your incredible life story with myself and with those who are going to be viewing this.
Michelle, thank you so much. I am beyond excited. Well, first of all, when you reached out to me and asked that and told me that this is what you want to do, that you want to launch this series of ReEnvision Life Talks, I was captivated by the idea of re-envisioning life. That's part of my, life, my vision for my life. It's like I feel like every few years, right, I re-envision my life and I'm being reborn into the whole new state of my chapter of my life. And that you invited me to be a first one, I'm beyond grateful, and I feel a lot of excitement and joy, and these experimentations, yeah, I love experimenting and having some fun, as you said, having some fun with it. And
Yeah.
it's awesome to talk to you in, yes, you said when we got on about 20 years.
Yeah. It's
It's
crazy. Time has
crazy.
flown. I can't believe your oldest is 19 years old. Like
18, 18, 18,
18. Okay,
18.
let's not rush the time, right?
Yes, please. But yeah, my oldest is graduating high school this coming Thursday.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wild.
I have no words. Actually, I am speechless when I look at this. I'm like, I'm going to have a 10th grader and I'm going to have a 7th grader. My youngest is going to be in 7th grade.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. She's still this little girl. She's my baby, you know?
That's incredible.
So yeah, it's awesome to be here. It's really great to be here.
I love what you said about like every few years being reborn. I have a mentor who actually says like we need to update our view on ourselves, you know, and I think the fact that you kind of conceptualize it in that kind of way, I think is right in line with even just my perspective of, yeah, there are things about ourselves that we maybe in some ways we know that we're growing in, but we're not as mindful about that. And when we can be really mindful about how we have grown over time, to be able to update our view of who we are and then operate from that place rather than who we were a year ago, even 5, 10 years ago, right? I think that makes such a huge
Absolutely.
difference on life outlook.
I think you're right. And what resonates with me when you sort of, what stops me when you talk about this is the idea of um, re-evaluating, because we're gaining new experiences. We're meeting new people. We had different shaping experiences in whatever, in last year, in last 6 months, different defining moments. And things are happening. Life is not, life is not steady. Things are happening.
Oh yeah.
Things are happening to us, around us, to the people around us. We lose some people and we bring new people into our lives. And it's important to check in with ourselves. Okay, who am I today?
Yeah.
Not who was I yesterday, who was I 20 years ago, but
Yeah.
who am I today? A lot of times we define ourselves, and this was a story of my life. I was defining myself by everything that happened to me in my childhood and in my teenage years. And I had that deep sense of, oh, I'm broken. Oh, I've been emotionally abused. Oh, I am the victim of my circumstances. And I lived out of that. Somehow defining that as somehow I allowed this to define who I am, rather than standing and facing it and saying, okay, who am I today?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so powerful. It is so, so powerful. And I have to say, Renata, as someone who has, I know we've had ebbs and flows, and social media has actually been the catalyst to keeping us in each other's lives. Thank you, social media, Facebook especially. But I do have to say that I've seen and sensed change in you and in your life, from when we first met to you were amazing back then. However, I think just to see the depth of, well, I don't know everything, but the change is palpable. And where you are today and what you do now, what you offer to so many people. I know part of what you do is really focused on women, but you've done, I think it impacts people just across the board, male, female.
Right.
It doesn't, it's not just kind of specifically to women. But I would love for you to let's go back and start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your life journey. We don't have a full like hours. I mean, your life is fascinating. So tell us a little bit about that.
See, I think the biggest shift for me happened when actually we talked about our kids, right, here a few seconds ago. And the biggest shift happened for me when my first was born, who is now almost 18. In my 20s and in my early 30s, I lived out of this, I want to say false realization of who I was. Because I thought, I needed to be tough and I needed to be strong and I was a go-getter and I had the super good careers, but I always was struggling with anger, with jealousy, with, envy, and looking at people, comparing myself constantly to these people around and trying to be better than whatever good I thought was. but when my first child was born, the intensity of giving birth to a child, and I know
Mhm.
has unlocked a lot of my memories that I didn't even know I had.
Wow.
And that's when I came. It was already in my mid-30s when I had my first child. Then I realized that I, as a child myself, experienced emotional abuse, and I experienced emotional neglect.
Mm.
And I was raised by a mom who tried her best with what she got, but by a mom who struggled with her own unresolved issues.
Mm.
So her modus operandi for parenting was anger.
Mm.
And I was not an easy child because I had ADD that I was never diagnosed with until I was an adult. I was high sensitivity person, which I didn't have a clue I was.
Mm.
So I was very emotional, and I was very, rebellious at time. And my mom's response to any of my misbehaviors was always anger. And I experienced that anger in different ways and different situations. It was either verbal, or she sometimes got physical. So when I gave birth to my child and my child started growing up and he was 2 or 3, I started noticing that I am actually beginning to parent in the exact same way that I said that I never will parent.
Mm.
So fast forward few years, I already have, 3 kids, and I'm happily married, and I have 3 super healthy kids, and on the outside, the world looks great.
Yeah.
But I remember this one morning. I wake up, I put my feet on the ground, and it's another sleepless night because I was really struggling with a lot of sleep, with nightmares and just a lot of emotional roller coaster, if you will.
Yeah.
Again, anger. I was accessing super easily, and that constant sense of I messed up again.
Mm.
And that then the shame kicks in. Of course you messed up because you're a horrible mom, because you're a horrible wife, because you're a horrible leader. And that was at the time when Tim and I were leading church in Warsaw. So I was helping others and developing leaders. And it was just a web of a lot of shame and anger and envy and jealousy and stress and frustration. Well, now I know more words. Then I knew only like 3 or 4 that I could describe what I was.
Yes, yes.
And so I remember that one morning I wake up, I go to the bathroom. It's still dark outside. It's fall. I turn on the light. I look at myself in the mirror and I go, what happened to you?
Hmm.
What happened to you? Where are you? And who are you? But, I didn't know where to go. I was spinning in circles. I thought I resolved some stuff, but then I would come back again. It was like the bungee, that I felt like I resolved, but I would come back. And then there was this one family that came to church. And after a few Sundays, this guy comes up to me and says, hey, I know this guy, this therapist, who I think would be a great help for you.
Hmm.
So my first response was like, how dare you? I mean, how dare you telling me that I need to go?
Wait, were they new? Were they like people you didn't really know, and they just
No, not really. I mean, they were there for maybe 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
The first time they came, I actually preached. And he loved how I preached, and they were really good members. They were good people, good good family, and their son became friends with our son. But this guy had the fifth sense or the sixth sense. He himself was member of a 12-step programs. So he had that, this kind of, he could sense something was just off. Yeah, exactly. So my first response was, of course, to his face, I was like, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. But then I thought to myself, man, how dare he? But you know what? I've tried everything on my own. I've tried every self-help book I bought every self-help book that resonated with me in the bookstores or in libraries, and it wasn't working. And I've realized that if I want something to change in my life, I need to try a different approach. So I reached out to him back when we saw each other next Sunday, and I said, okay, that was, I've been thinking what you said. So he was like, you know what? This is the guy's number. Call him, make an appointment. And then I started making excuses. What if I don't like the guy? What if our energies don't work together? He's like, just call him and go. And then he did unbelievable thing. He said, I paid for your first 5 sessions.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yes. So this was my lesson number 1, because as a person who grew up in abusive context, I was always relying on myself. Asking for help and receiving help was not in my behavior, in my behaviors.
Yeah.
So I've decided I'm going to receive that help. And the rest is history. That's, starting that therapy was huge for many reasons. First of all, I realized for the first time I was in my 40s already, because that's like, years later, that I actually had PTSD, CPTSD, the complex PTSD. Otherwise, I think you guys call it the complex stress disorder.
Yes.
And I lived locked into that. So I had struggle naming my emotions. I could, I knew that I was feeling either anger, anxiety, or depression. Those are like 3 things that I could name. And then I remember reading Brene Brown or listening to one of her podcasts when she talks about, people, that wholehearted people can name 60 emotions. And I was like, I walked into the therapist's office and I went, okay, what's up with these emotions and feelings? I can name 5. He laughs. He's like, do you want a list? I was like, yes, please. That was my introduction to nonviolent communication. Wow. Where I realized that my emotions are actually there to serve me, to help me.
Yes.
And and then started rolling. The whole process was rough. I'm sure you've seen it with your clients. I see it with some of my clients.
Yeah. We can actually say it may get worse before it gets better.
My gosh.
Like it gets worse before it actually feels like it's getting better.
I literally felt I was collapsing.
Oh.
I literally felt that it felt so strange and new and uncomfortable and painful that I was this close to ask for a mental sick leave from my work.
Yeah.
Because I was falling apart.
Wow.
Like everything I knew about myself was falling apart. And it was when I finished the therapy, I was somewhat sorted, but it still felt like I was walking on rubble of my life.
So before you move, hold on to that rubble, because I just want to reflect back so much of what you just said, because you brought up so many incredible things here in your journey that I think those who view this, who see this, like you've just normalized in some ways. I think all of us to some degree or another go through trauma. In life, you don't even know that it's trauma. Many of us go through stress disorders, undiagnosed ADHD or ADD, not knowing that you are a highly sensitive person. And that's something really new in one sense, I guess over the last 15, 20 years that it's really just kind of come to the forefront as well. And I think I imagine, Renata, that you just named several things that people are wondering about themselves or have recently been diagnosed with or just are learning about within themselves. And so just to hear that reflected in your story, I think is very powerful. And I appreciate you just sharing that and putting that out there. And even just that process of the up and down and it just being so, it's not a walk in the park, that's for sure. Yeah. It's, I just wanted to pause for a moment and just thank you for that part of just kind of sharing that. That's huge. But you're talking about
you said that I normalized it. I think the big part of the recovery was actually normalizing it, because for the longest time, up until I started the recovery with the help of therapists and then later on life coach, was that prevailing sense of there's something wrong with me. Everybody else seems to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
How come nobody else gets angry? How come nobody else yells? How come nobody else has, starts crying for no reason? How come everybody else seems to focus on what they're doing?
Right.
There's something wrong with me. But when I realized that there is nothing wrong with me, this is just how I am wired. And I realized that it's okay to feel all these things. It's what I do with them is what makes the difference. And I know making it normal, I was able to take a deep breath and sort of sit like, okay, it's me. This is just seeing yourself in the mirror and going back to that mirror and going, this is me. And it's okay that I'm not okay sometimes. And it's okay that, I felt anger. It's not okay if I blew the casket and, just ran over people like a tank, because I used to do that. But it's okay that I feel angry. It's the question what I do with it, right? And how do I don't want to use the word process, because it's more of accepting it, or accepting the sadness. A lot of people feel like, oh, why am I, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. It's like, I should be grateful because my life is so good. Other people have it worse. Well, let's talk about you here and now, not about all these other people.
Yes.
Because it's your story. It is my story.
Yes.
It's not a story of your neighbor. It's not a story of your colleague that you're sharing a desk with. It is your story. What is real for you?
Yeah, that is so, so true. I talk often about the shoulds, right? And how should is I think it comes from a place of shame, and it boxes us in. And so I often will say, stop shoulding on yourself. Yourself. Because it just is not helpful. And so, all of us should definitely stop shoulding on ourselves. And,
absolutely
live from that place of we have a choice, right? Like you're saying, and you said something earlier too, as you were sharing your story, like you made a decision, even though, let's say, this amazing person came in the beginning, you're like, what are you talking about? How dare you tell me I need therapy, right? And he should go, and he gifted you with these 5 sessions, which is incredible. But I think there was something that you said that struck out to me, going back to when you were talking about this, is that the decision that you made. The decision piece is so powerful, right? Because you can have it there and make up every excuses, but when internally you're like, okay, I'm going to decide, I'm going to do it. Right. That to me sounds like that began to change your story.
Yeah, it was. It's like I'm sure you've heard that saying, right? What's the definition of insanity? Expecting different results and doing the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
And that's what it was. It's like, I knew I've tried everything on my own. And if somebody who is on that journey just few years before me is telling me that it's a helpful resource, I paid attention. And I think this was the big thing. A lot of people, you say, the excuses are using excuses. And I see it right now that those excuses are, I don't want to say unwillingness, because that puts the judgment, but it's actually fear that it will hurt. Yeah. And because you don't want to step into that hurt zone, you have that question of uncertainty, what it will require of me.
Absolutely.
To go through that.
Oh, yeah. Because it did hurt.
Of course. Falling apart. I mean, it was a rubble of my life all around me. I wasn't able to parent. I wasn't able to, to wife. I wasn't able to show up in church and to show up for my friends because I was in pieces. But this was for the first time in my life where I felt free to fall into those pieces. And I was like, no, it's purposeful falling apart into pieces.
I love that, purposeful falling apart into pieces and allowing yourself to fall into those pieces. That's so beautiful. I feel very emotional reflecting that back and hearing you say that.
It was because I see a lot of, I've had people coming to me saying, hey, I would like to work with you, but right now I don't know if I have money and I have time and I have this. And when I start hearing those, I'm seeing the warning signs. And
Yeah.
the warning like, I have no money. Well, you're not ready.
Mm.
I have no time. Well, you don't want to.
Mm.
And I'm not judging. I'm holding it going, when you're ready. And when it's like, I'm here, you know where to find me. I'm not, this is the kind of process, that transformation process that you need to enter yourself.
Yes.
Willingly. Because like in any recovery process, therapy is part of recovery process, whatever it is that you're recovering from. It could be addictions, but it could be your childhood trauma, but it could be, the expectations of your very demanding grandmother that, always thought that you're going to be the strong one. And at some point, the roles in my household reversed. I was parenting my mom, which becomes super draining on the child.
Yes.
And it's actually, that's not what you're supposed to do.
No, that's what we often call it, being a parentified child.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So that's exactly what was happening. And I was realizing part of what needed to happen was actually grieving some of the childhood that never happened to me.
Mm.
And grief is not pleasant. It's, as you said, it's not walk in the park. It's more like you're going through the muck and through mud, and it's a shifting sand, and you feel like you have some foot on something steady, but then it shakes again and you fall in again. So, and then you're redefining, you're rebuilding. It's like, it's, as you said, it has to get worse before it gets better.
Renata, let me ask you, like, what helped you in the midst of, like, when you hit bottom, right? When you're like, you're at like the height of pain and feeling like this is way too much. Like, I imagine you may have had those days or moments. What helped you to just keep going?
Determination that I don't want my kids to grow up with an angry mom. And I was willing to do whatever it takes to stop messing them up. Wow. Even though I tell them till this day that one day they might end up in a therapy because of, being parent by me and Tim.
We'll all have a jar for our kids, right?
But I didn't want them to have an angry mom. And I wanted that word that you said, normalized. It keeps coming back. I wanted them to feel and see that it's normal to heal, that it's normal to fall to pieces, that it's normal to not, to be hurting and to try to make sense out of that hurt, and to talk about it.
Yeah.
And to admit that, I don't know what's happening to me right now. And to live from that place of, this is what I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And just allowing it to be a part of the conversation around the table.
Yeah, that's so good. I really sense the journey that you took into healing that was there. I'm wondering, you mentioned grief and grieving, and I think that is a huge part when we go back and look at our childhood and what was experienced. That part of it also entails forgiveness.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes. It was big. It's, again, entering forgiveness is very painful because it's, again, it's your willingness and how willing and how open you are to face some of those dragons from the past.
Yeah.
Those demons in the past that hurt you. Yeah. So forgiveness came together, I think, with grieving. And I had to forgive not just, my mom or my grandma or whoever else was in there, but I needed to forgive myself as well for a lot of things that I have done, not knowing that I was under the influence of my CPTSD and the trauma from my childhood. So it was, it was a spiral it was going, sometimes I was, it was going up, but sometimes it was falling back down again. I think, some of the habits, like journaling or naming my feelings, or being able to recognize the need for grief and for mourning and for that presence and integrity, to bring that back into my life, helped me stay with it. Forgiveness was, I think, the hardest part to do, because it seems to be like the most, I almost want to say, it's like, it felt like a jello, you're grabbing it, but it kind of, you feel like you got it. If you look at it from the outside, it's like, oh, okay, I know what to do with it. Right. And then you pick it up, and it's like kind of, and it falls between your fingers, and you're like, where did it go? I thought I did it, but so it was hard, and some of that was actually especially hard, as in my mom 5 years ago, it's going to be 6 years actually, that died of cancer. And she was one of the people that I needed to forgive, and that was one of the hardest part, was that I knew exactly that God wanted me to do it. It was, leaning into my faith was a big part of it. But it wasn't easy, because when my mom was her last stages of, when she was dying of cancer, my mom was one of my, emotional abusers. And in her last stage of cancer, I needed to take care of her. I'm the only child, so there was nobody else to lean on and ask for help. And that was still at the time when I wasn't great at asking for help either, and admitting that I need help. I was taking great pride in being self-sufficient. Another lie, we're not self-sufficient. and it felt like God, I needed to do this, take care of my abuser, who I know loved me. It's just she didn't know how to deal with a lot of her stuff. But it wasn't about her. It was about me right now. And it wasn't about excusing her or not excusing or whatever. It was about me, about that moment, and what do I do with me, with what's going on in me. And it felt a lot like, it felt, I know unfair is not a feeling, but it felt unfair. It felt, it's like, why do I have to take care of her right now? Be loving and be kind and be gentle, because, she was in a super fragile state. She lost contact with reality, and she wasn't able to take care of herself, to feed herself, to take herself to the bathroom, nothing, right? The last stage cancer was horrible. And there I needed to give her kindness and gentleness and patience and love and understanding, all these things that I've never received from her. Never. And it was hard. It was so hard. And, I said I was leaning into faith, and I was often asking, like, God, what do you want me to do in this? And it almost felt like God was like, no, you know exactly what you need to do in that. And honor your mother and father, right? And it's like, okay, I get this. Fine. And I was able to do it.
Wow.
But I was relying a lot on the habits of being able to process in a safe space the fact that I am angry. I feel angry that I have to do it, that I feel disappointed that I had to do it. And how come I have to do it now, when she wasn't there for me when I was a little kid? And I needed that understanding and that gentleness and kindness. But even in that, because I was making intentional choices, between, and I know that quote, between the stimulus and our response, there is a space. And in that space lies a choice of how we are gonna respond. And in that response lies our growth and our future. And I have experienced that space where you're making that choice of I can either walk out of here and be angry, or I can allow that pain go through me, watch it, but don't let it hijack.
Yeah. Renata, I'm hearing you, and I'm like, part of me like is wanting for you to keep going. Like I feel so emotional. It's so powerful. Like just it's, you think about it, 5, 6 years ago, it feels long, and at the same time in just life, right? It's not that long ago. And how you were able to take those moments and just be really in tune with yourself. But what I really hear as well is how your faith played a role in this, in giving you strength and helping guide you. And yeah, I imagine there are moments where it's like, screw this faith. I don't want to do it. Right? Like, God, why do I have to? Because that hurt, the anger that comes from that hurt of what, gosh, when you said like, I had to give to her what I didn't get. Oh man, like I'm like, that speaks to just your faith, who God is in your life, but also how you were able to, it goes back to that decision piece that you're saying, right?
Yes.
And that stimulus and what you decide to do, and just like that in between space, and how I see how remarkable that has been in your life, in these moments. And oftentimes I think it's these micro moments
Yes,
help
absolutely.
us, right, to get through what feels like a mountain of pain or the impossibility of that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And and I have to tell you that if I didn't have that self-compassion part in it, as in I recognized that it hurt, and there was a part of me that was really did not want to do the hard work of forgiveness and of grieving and of meeting my mom in her vulnerability and weakness with everything that I didn't receive. But I was able to respond to that part of me with self-compassion and recognize it. This was already at that place where I was able not to be judgmental towards myself, or I was able to turn off that voice that said, that judged me. Oh, how can you? Look at your mom. She's so sick. How can you feel anger towards her? I was able to say, you know what? Yeah, there is a reason why I feel that anger, or that I feel that resentment to that whole,
Acknowledging of your
yes,
experience, that's
yes.
so powerful. Yeah.
And just letting it go and observe it, rather, and allowing it to go through me, and allowing that denial and that rejection and that, be there without just jumping on it and letting, I was driving it rather than it was driving me.
Yeah.
And that's where really the self-compassion comes in, recognizing, you know what, it's just, it happened. It's I feel it. It's real for me, but I can still show up the way I choose to be, how I want to be, who I want to be. I don't want to be the judge.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Many people will ask, okay, I hear you, Renata, but how do you do that? Because how do you go from a life of hurt and pain? I hear that you did therapy, but how do you, I know the concept of self-compassion.
Yeah.
How does that actually happen? Because I imagine there are people who are going to be viewing this and, okay, great.
And now what do I do with it, right? Yes, yeah. It's interesting that you're saying, because it's a question that a lot of people ask me too, right? Because the therapy was one step, then there was a meeting with the life coach, and I think I've done coaching with the sessions, like the whole process is with her twice. So there was one for, we worked for 6 months, and then a year later we worked again for 6 months. You know what? I'm going to tell you the biggest shift in sort of in how, my biggest how was learning to name my emotions. It sounds so simple and basic, and everybody's gonna go like, yeah, whatever. Literally, I don't have with me right now, you should see, I have a list printed list
Yeah.
that I printed 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It's still the same one. It's all taped up. I refuse to print a new one because I have emotional attachment to that old one that I use then and I still use. Step one, name what you're feeling.
Yes.
And the reason for it is super basic. It's our brain. It's literally our brain is wired to look for danger all around us. Our amygdala is constantly asking one question: Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? So, and because we don't, there will be no tiger and there will be no dinosaur that's gonna devour me in 2 minutes, but I can allow the anger to devour me, or the sadness to devour me, or I can allow all these things to devour me, or I can name what I'm feeling. So that was my number one, giving myself self-empathy, like meeting myself with pen and paper with my list of feelings. What am I feeling? And just going through it. And then kind of zooming out and saying, okay, what does that tell me about my longings? Like, how do I know that these, I knew that these feelings matter and they were important. Now it was the question why they are important. What do I long in all of this? Right. And I do it for both the emotions that, the feelings that we all don't like, and they're more difficult to handle, and the good ones. It's like, okay.
I love what you just, because with the feelings, by the way, because we often label it as good or bad, but I love that you said we don't like, they're not bad, so it's like non-judgmental language that I'm also like trying to get people to see, like it's maybe unhelpful, unwanted emotions, right? The anger, the deep depression and sadness, but we're gonna feel it and have it every once in a while, right? Or again, bad.
This is the big thing for me with the nonviolent communication. This was part of the reason, and this is something that I'm incorporating in my online course right now.
And I would love to have you talk about that more.
Yeah, it's the big thing was to realize that there are no bad and good feelings, because that's another thing that I grew up with, right? We all grew up with it.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't feel anger. That's bad. Or you can't feel whatever because that's bad, or don't feel that way. Don't feel that way. Or why are you feeling this? It's like, you shouldn't feel that way. You have everything. You should be grateful. Why are you sad? It's like, no. And that whole dialogue of there are feelings that we don't like, but they point, all of our feelings that point to other met needs or unmet needs, to something that we hold dear, that it's not being right now met in our lives, the longings that we have. And when you meet yourself without that judgment, this is where actually your growth starts happening. This is where the transformation starts happening. When you release yourself of that judgment, that, when you accept all the good and bad and beautiful and ugly of your life, and all the, shortcomings and your victories and all the failures, you allow yourself space to actually fail and to actually try things, and to, a lot of people are afraid of getting out of their comfort zone. There's such a big thing. It's like, you got to get out of your comfort zone. That's where the magic happens. That's where the adventure starts. That's where your life is. And that's true. But to get out of that comfort zone, to step into that confidence, to grow that confidence, and is not to get rid of fear. It's not to get rid of self-doubt, not to get rid of negative self-talk, because you can't. Yeah. Because our brains are wired for, trying to keep us safe, right?
Right.
So you're going to have that going on around within you. The question is, how do you navigate through it? This is one of the things that I do and I teach in my course. It's a journey from self-doubt to confidence, but the tools you're gaining is about navigating that emotional roller coaster, navigating that self-doubt. Yeah. Meet yourself in that self-doubt. Allow yourself that those feelings to point to what it is that actually you either need, and the self-acceptance and the process of even observing your life experiences rather than letting them define you.
Yes. Yes.
Treating them as lessons for growth, and
Yes.
treating them as, the opportunities rather than obstacles.
Yes.
And reframing, that's another thing that was helping me, naming the emotion and reframing my experience,
Yeah.
and reframing what I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
And this is what we do in the course. We walk through the 4 weeks of learning to, first, what it is that you define as confidence for yourself. How would that, what will be possible in your life if you lived confidently?
Yeah.
If you lived, without that self-doubt. Let's, wave the magic wand and see, okay, well, let's imagine that there is no fear. Let's imagine that there is no self-doubt. What would be possible for you? What will your relationships look like? What will your marriage look like? What will your career look like? How would you be making decisions in your life?
Yeah.
And now look back, what happened in your life? Well, one of the things that we do is, I call this exercise a rear view mirror, because when you're going in the thick of it, when you are in the thick of everything that's happening in your life, it's really hard to detach, and it's really hard to evaluate.
Yeah.
But if you can step back and look at your history, your life story, you will see, where your superpowers lie.
Yeah.
You will find where your capabilities are. You will see what kind of people influence you forward rather than holding you back.
Yeah.
And then you can invite this kind of voices more into your life.
Absolutely.
And they've done, and the whole confidence building in my course is very strongly built on self-compassion. I rely a lot on Christine Neff's research and the way she defines self-compassion, as in self-acceptance, that what's happening to me, it's normal, it's common humanity, we all experience it.
Mm.
Because so many of us think that, we look at different people around us and we think that nobody has problem with confidence. You have that annoying colleague.
I'm the only one.
Yes. There's this annoying colleague at work who always asks for, raise or promotion, or, you watch the leaders, you can pick whoever, Michelle Obama or Beyonce. They seem to have all that figured out. But when you listen to their stories, they navigate through that stuff.
Yeah.
They don't let that hold them back.
Right.
But they, so this is what I do. I use self-compassion as a tool to build your grounded confidence. Not put on one, not fake one that's built solely on positive self-esteem booster kind of exercises.
Yeah.
Because as good as they are, sometimes you need them as a little shot before you need to go and do life with Michelle, right? But, or go and talk to your boss and ask for a raise, or go and tell your husband that you have a problem and you want to talk to him about something difficult. Whatever it is, those little self-esteem boosters, as in positive attributes, are important. But to build that grounded confidence, where you know who you are, where you know what your values are, when you know when you make choices, how you want to show up in life, this is so important, that we show up with self-compassion, with that empathy for ourselves, to accept the failures and the victories, and that we learn from them rather than let them lock us into, oh, we can't grow. There's research in I think it's I read it recently, University of Rhode Island and University of Memphis. They were doing research on people building their self-confidence either through self-compassion or the self-esteem boosters, and there was a control group where they just asked them to write about their hobbies and their favorite things to do. Mm. And they've noticed, this was about self-development, who will be more prone to actually dive into, be more open to growth and help themselves grow.
Sounds like growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
Exactly. Turns out that people with self-compassion that did that exercise, they were asked to write, to be more compassionate to the setbacks that they recently experienced. The group with the self-esteem boosters were asked to write something positive about themselves, like the positive attributes, regardless of that setback. And the self-compassion group actually scored higher on the growth mindset and the willingness to learn from the setback than the ones with the self-esteem booster. So we are whole beings.
Yeah.
We can't just live with positive on mountaintop, everything great about us.
Right.
Yes, there's a lot great about us, but there are setbacks in life.
Yeah.
And there are difficulties in life. And if you're going to try to push yourself through and push down the sorrow and the pain and the fear, then it's going to show up somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away magically. So it's better to meet yourself with that voice of non-judgment, non-critical, but just acceptance. Oh, okay, this is what happened, right? And it sounds like I'm trying to turn off the emotions, but really what you're doing, you're just letting them be.
Yeah, you're acknowledging them. You're validating this.
Absolutely.
Which is so needed. Yeah, you're speaking my language, Renata.
Yeah, and you're expressing them. And this is one of the things, this is something that we work through in the 4-week course. It's, learning to not so much get rid of fear, because I want people to normalize the idea that you will be afraid.
Yes.
That reminds me of the Yoda talking to Luke in Star Wars. Luke says, "But I'm not afraid." And Yoda says, "Oh, you will be. Oh, you will be." Yeah. Because every time you step out to do something new, your amygdala is going to be going, this is dangerous. Am I safe? And your brain's going to start scanning for everything that is potentially dangerous.
Confirmation biases, right?
Absolutely.
And
to me, the sense of fear only means, of course you're afraid. That only means that you're A, growing, B, about to learn something new, and C, you're human.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love, here's the whole thing about self-compassion. And then I want you to actually talk a little bit about just how people can find your course, and then, what they need to do if they're interested in learning more about what you've talked about and how you can help them. Because I think, the marriage of both therapy and coaching, because I think there are people who come to me and who want therapy, but, really I'm thinking I don't think you need therapy. I think the next step is actually, you've done the work. I think doing the coaching is something that might actually be helpful to you to kind of keep going and to move forward in a different kind of way. But I wanted to say, with this whole self-compassion piece, our brains are literally hardwired for sure. But each time we practice self-compassion and acknowledging our emotions and validating that and just kind of letting it be, we actually are rewiring our brains.
Absolutely.
To actually have a different response. So you go from a reaction to much more of a response that's giving space to what's going on. And so we are capable of change. I think that's how, we can keep going. And
everything in our brain is hardwired for our change.
Yeah.
It's not written in stone. All these connections, the pathways, they are moldable. I think this is the greatest hope for us as humans. Yeah. That just because something happened to us, it doesn't mean that that it's going to stay like this forever. Yeah. Every time you practice, some of the tools that we're working through in the course is things, as simple things seem like, gratitude, but that's one of the things we go through. But you're literally teaching your brain to look for positives and for the good things and be grateful for the bad things. What did you learn in that experience? Yeah. And that was one of the things I'm teaching my kids. It's okay, the gratitude, things you're thankful for, it doesn't have to be only good things. Yeah. Think about what was difficult today and how you can be grateful for that. Yeah. And what I love the beauty about rewiring, the neuroplasticity of that is every time you practice a new skill, a new habit, you are using and you're building new pathways. Yeah. But every time you're building those new pathways, you're not using the old ones. And they actually grow weaker and they die. So you literally are rewiring your brain.
Yeah.
I know I made it sound super simple right now. I am not a neuroscientist, but I am super passionate about it
Yes.
because this is where self-compassion comes from. Because this is where you can, tell you, it's like literally you can take amygdala almost and talk to it and say, you're safe.
Right.
Look, let's move together, right? Let's be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
So this is something that I do. We work through the course. It's through self-compassion. One of the things we work through is self-care, and how, because self-care comes along, self-compassion a lot, and is super important for staying compassionate for yourself. And self-care, again, is very misunderstood, but I am working. Some of the exercises that we're doing there is for people to actually build the self-care that aligns with their lifestyle and their personality, because the self-care is going to look very different for everybody.
Yeah.
And there are different layers of self-care.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people don't understand that grief is actually part of the self-care.
Yes, I love that you said that. I absolutely love that you said that, because people do not think about that at all. But I am right there with you. 100% agree.
It's not just going to the gym. It's not just hanging out. There's so much more than there.
Yes.
And this is something that we work through in the course as well.
So
the course is called From Fear to Fears. I'm Polish, so I mispronounce that, my husband tells me. So From Fear to Fears, a 4-week journey from self-doubt to confidence.
Yeah.
And to that grounded confidence. That's my favorite way of describing it. And I love the fact that actually a lot of other scientists, including Brené Brown researcher and Christine Neff, they all talk about grounded confidence. And the grounded confidence is about accepting all your experiences.
Yeah.
Not ignoring the bad ones and focusing only on positive ones. Accepting them all into your life as part of who you are.
Yeah.
As your whole makeup, how you are built, your personality, your lifestyle, your what you value in life, what you long for in life. The course right now, you can access it on my profile. It's either in my bio. There is a link there. You can click on it and you can sign up. It will take you through the whole process. It's super simple. It's a join now. It's a summer offer, 4 weeks course, but with a 6 weeks access. And this time I'm giving it at a super promotional offer. It's $197 for the 4 weeks.
Great.
It's a self-paced course. So it's a time of, you will have space for daily 10 to 15 minutes reflection time, then one weekly exercise that will demand about an hour of your time. And we meet live once a week for Q&A, conversation on Zoom. We come in, and then you have access 24/7 to me and to other peers.
24/7 to you? Oh my God!
Facebook, I know, but it's a Facebook group, and you have access to me. You can send all your questions. I respond. I enjoy empowering people, inspiring people, and being with people, encouraging people. That's the most life-giving aspect of doing this.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I do it is because I want to see more brave and engaged and courageous women out there, not just for us, but for the next generation. I'm setting an example for my daughters to show them how to chase their dreams and how to be brave, even if you're afraid.
Yeah.
So this is just, it's 4 weeks of being together, journeying together. I'm coming alongside you on that journey. And I chose July because it seems to me like a transition month. It's like we've done 6 months of this year. There is another 6 months ahead of us. And that July, I know it's a part of the next 6 months, but it seems like in between. It's kind of summer, and it's kind of when, it's time when you can actually, your kids are off school. So it seems like there's less on our plates. And take time for the workbooks. They are all released there. The exercises, the workbooks, I release once a week material. The videos are pre-recorded but I am present live in the group, and we have weekly live meetings in the Facebook group, because that's a container for the course.
That's wonderful. Renata, I imagine so much of what you offer, again, it's authentic, because doing what you're doing now, there's this saying that we kind of find ourselves doing what we do because of our own stories, our own lives, and I certainly am a therapist, a marriage family therapist, because of my own life experiences as well. And your story resonates so much with mine in different ways for different reasons. But how beautiful and powerful. And I love that you are doing this and offering this specifically for women. Sorry, men. Maybe we're not on the road.
I did have men go through a beta version when I was building the course out. I had men running, and so if you're a man and you actually are curious if this is for you, reach out to me, ask me questions. Don't dismiss it just because it says ambitious women. Talk to me. Stay curious. That's one of the things that I teach in a course. Move from judgment to curiosity. And that's what self-compassion allows you to do. You stay curious because you ask questions rather than coming from the statements. Oh, I suck. What do I need in this moment?
So much better. So much better. And it's much more motivating to want to do something, right? When you are self-compassionate. So I love that. So if people want to follow you, they can find you on Facebook at Renata Constable.
Renata Constable. And there's also my page, From Fear to Freedom Coaching. That's the name of my page. And I am on Instagram, which is Renata_Constable. And I'm also on LinkedIn under my name, Renata Constable.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Renata, for your time. I really hope that as people tuned in, or if they catch the replay later on, that they will really be blessed by what they heard. And I absolutely, I love you, and I thank you again. And I look forward to having you back on at some point. We'll see where this talk goes for me. But thank you all of you for joining us. And I'll, on YouTube, actually, I'll have some links. And I guess even on my Facebook page, I can link to your page and have all that information there as well. So thank you again. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. I love you too. This was amazing.
It was. And yeah, we were both anxious and like, how's it going to go? But I think we did it.
We did it. I'm sure we've learned plenty in this.
We did, for sure. All right, Renata, well, have a great day, and thank you all again for tuning in. We appreciate you, and we hope that you felt really encouraged by today. Take care, and may you be able to re-envision life in the way that you've always wanted, and may you learn how to live it. Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.